Hello, welcome back to Armchair Sports Talk. This is Brandon Harris. Today we're going to cover the shocking news of Andrew Luck's retirement, what the retirement means for the Colts and the rest of the AFC South in this upcoming season, plus fantasy football strategies to help you dominate your league with any budget. And welcome back to Armchair Sports Talk. This is Brandon Harris, and joining us tonight is going to be Mr. Sterling Brown from Orlando, Florida, an NFL expert. Sterling, how you doing tonight?
Yeah, I'm doing good. Anytime we talk football is a good time.
Getting close to that opening weekend and some big news coming out of Indianapolis. Midway through their preseason game, the real Adam Schefter, which there was some debate whether or not that was going to be the case, tweeted out that Andrew Luck was retiring, took everybody by surprise and shocked. So we just want to kind of start off with that news, and then Sterling just talk about our initial thoughts. So what did you think off the top?
Yeah, my first thought was it was a typo. I think I was watching the Miami Florida game, and everybody was watching it with. We all checked our phones, tried to confirm, make sure that was the case, because it kind of popped up and went away real quick at the bottom of the ESPN ticker. So once we confirmed it was accurate, we all kind of just were like, wow. And the more it kind of set in for me, I guess I started to understand it, to be honest. I played basketball growing up, but I always had a fondness for football. Gave it a little try in high school, but nothing too serious. And it's a tough sport. 2 weeks of spring training was more than enough for me to reconsider my time on the football field. So I give kudos to Andrew Luck for playing as long as he did. Big picture, I think he's going to be better off. I mean, at 29 years old, he's stopping all these hits in his case, I don't think he had too many to the head, but to the rest of his body. So hopefully he can heal up and enjoy whatever's next for him.
Yeah, it's a little bit surprising from that standpoint, just based on how much the quarterback is protected in today's NFL. To your point about not many hits to the head. However, I did see a few highlights that came back from his rookie year. One of them in particular, I believe it was Clay Matthews, but absolutely demolished him from his front side, just right under his chin. And so Luck was, he's a big guy, and it was really cool to see. And I remember the commentators always pointing out, like, when Luck would throw a pick, he would chase down like he was a defender. And I mean, he would lay you out, more so than any other quarterback you would ever see, just trying to get out of the way or run him out of bounds. So this was a different type of quarterback that was just kind of refreshing from the game that seemed to be a little bit soft. And but the injuries took a toll. I mean, I think Ryan Grigson was the GM's name that drafted Luck, brought him into the league. Really, that's the person that I think is most at fault and should be shamed for this whole thing, because at the end of the day, I mean, we'll get into this in a minute, but fans booed, which I don't think is appropriate, being that Andrew Luck is a person and that it's his decision. He's a responsible adult. But at the same time, from a fan standpoint, I can understand, like, they feel like this was short-lived, short-changed, so to speak. You look at it from not just a Colts fan perspective, but from a football fan's perspective, to a fantasy perspective, to a betting perspective. Like, this is the guy that was supposed to be the next Peyton Manning, taking over the throne there, and maybe even then some. Like, the most talented quarterback prospect since Manning and since a John Elway. So that's where I can see it from both sides, and that's what makes it so difficult to understand. But I just think the Grigson just did not do a good enough job those first few years to put talent around him. Then you get the new GM in there, Chris Ballard's his name, right?
You got me on that. The name does sound familiar, so I believe you're right.
I'm pretty sure that's his name, but this guy is doing a fantastic job in Indianapolis.
Team's great, to be honest. They have a really good team.
Chris Ballard. There you go. I was right. The guy's doing a heck of a job, put an excellent team around him. And that's the other thing where, as a Colts fan, I understand. They're like, man, we got the team around him. We got the offensive line going. We got good skill position players. The defense can play. But now Luck, those first 3 years, he just took too many shots. And then it's starting to have an effect on him emotionally. Physically, he can't get right. It's one injury after the other. So I really commend Andrew Luck for a few reasons. For basically realizing that there's more to life than football, than a sport, although you can look at it from the argument of, hey, there's only so many people on this earth that can do what you do at that level. Therefore, you owe it to everybody else to stick it out there and play. But it's his decision, and I think he's a well-educated man, a very bright man, could probably run a company just like his dad's running the XFL. So I think you're going to see it that him use other talents other than his brawn, you know what I mean, in his body to make himself successful. So that brings us to our next point, in which we've debated back and forth. I'm a firm believer that once he goes through this initial phase of getting over and getting past, because I think a lot of it's psychological. I think his body's hurting, and I think, man, it's just another setback. But I think once he gets that behind him, he starts to feel good again in about a year. The Cowboys maybe have a quarterback issue going on. Jerry Jones starts calling, or I don't know. Maybe it's another opening happens. And this is going to happen throughout the year. The first quarterback that goes down this year, there's going to be starting that, the rumors going out. Oh, they're going to give Andrew Luck a call. Or what if Joe Flacco doesn't work out in Denver? Then Andrew Luck. John Elway is going to be on a plane, right? So we're going to be seeing that. I'm a firm believer that Andrew Luck's going to play again. You, on the other hand, think differently. You think he's done. So tell us why you think he's done.
Yeah, we do differ. And let's acknowledge that a lot of these NFL GMs, they are concerned about players like Andrew Luck that come out of college that, they're not, working hard and fighting for every next meal because they don't know where it's coming from. Like Andrew Luck's dad, like you said, he's running the XFL, former NFL player. He's a man of many interests. So I remember, I don't follow college football that closely, but whenever you have people coming out, most recently Josh Rosen, that was the knock on him coming out of UCLA from a well-off family. Great football player, obviously. We're still waiting to see what becomes of him in Miami. But that's the new concern now is these guys coming up that are highly skilled at football, but they can do a lot of other things. And the toll that football takes on your body, I think this is a very similar situation to when Calvin Johnson retired from the Lions. The timing is a little different, but they were roughly around the same age. I think 30 when he did that.
Yes. Another good, more recent example is Gronkowski, of course. We have the Patrick Willis example, retiring a little bit early. You can go as far back to Barry Sanders, who everyone believed we were all robbed a little bit of that. But at running back, it's understandable. Then there's some more recent examples with the CTE kind of growing with those kind of concerns. I remember the 49ers linebacker a couple of years ago, his name escapes me, but he was like rookie of the year, retired after his second year, right around that same time that Willis also retired. So it is a trend more so, but not at the quarterback position. You got Breeze playing into his 40s. Brady's trying to play till he's 77. All these quarterbacks that just seem like they can play forever. And now Andrew Luck's hanging it up at 29 years old. It's just crazy to say that. Just crazy. Yeah. So I don't think he's done. But were you convinced by the press conference, or what really sold you on the fact that he's not playing anymore?
The press conference seemed convincing. I think that no person in, I want to say in the right mind with the CTE references and everything. So no person would bring this upon themselves to get this, the booing that was immediate, the comments in the media, like we talked about Doug Gottlieb saying that this is the most millennial thing ever. I'll acknowledge that was a funny tweet, but it was a shitty tweet at the same time. It was appropriate to chuckle at, feel bad, and then you got to enjoy when Troy Aikman came in to condemn him.
When a colleague came in and just crushed him. That was
exactly.
Great.
So all of that was accurate, needed to be mentioned. I'm sure it ran through a lot of our thoughts. And I think it's going to be a little more normal. I'm not going to call it normal, but more normal just means, the last person I think we referenced was around the same time, Patrick Willis, Calvin Johnson. If anything, they were pretty close together as far as when they retired. So they were more about starting a trend than Andrew Luck is. So I think we're already seeing it. We're already seeing this trend that originated back, I guess the oldest one I can remember would be a Barry Sanders, like you referenced. So.
Yeah, and I think another disturbing trend that's kind of a side note or an underlying story to all this is the distrust between the players and their training staffs.
Yes.
You're seeing it right now with Trent Williams holding out in Washington. He doesn't have faith in their training staff. Andrew Luck had issues year in, year out with his recovery, not really trusting them. And it also bleeds over into other sports with a Kawhi Leonard, and basically that ultimately led to him leaving San Antonio. So in general, I think the players are not basically they're putting their own minds into it a little bit more, and they're trying to look out for themselves a little bit more. Whereas in years past, I think if me as a player, the trainer says, "Hey, go do this," or "Hey, you'll be fine if you do this or that," then you jump in and you do it. Right? That's just what we would do as players. But
Right.
but now it seems like the players are kind of thinking a little bit more towards their own future, whereas I think the training staff is getting heavily pressured and influenced by the front office and the coaching staff. Get this guy back on the field. Get this guy back on the field. So I think it's an interesting, again, a side note, but really probably an underlying issue to why so many players in the previous, decades have this issue of CTE coming on, have these devastating injuries, and really just felt used throughout their career and misled. So it's an interesting issue. I think Andrew Luck, I think it could be, again, this is part of a little conspiracy that has been drummed up, but I kind of buy into a little bit. If he lost faith in the Colts organization and their training staff's ability to get him on the field and keep him on the field for his long-term interest, not just to win the Colts next game, and he totally sold out and just said, "I'm sorry, Jim Irsay, I can't do it. I don't have faith in the organization anymore," then, hey, I'm going to go get healthy, get my mind right, stay out for a year, and then come back and look at my other options. Maybe I don't think it's the XFL. I think that'd be a really cool storyline if he at least entertained it. And maybe there's no way they would be able to afford it. But I think a Herschel Walker type transaction. I think it'll most likely be a college player that the XFL steals away. I don't think it's going to be an established player like Luck, but I think he plays again. Anyways, I'm just going on a rant right there. I have a lot of thoughts on it, clearly. But really bizarre story. I think at the end of the day, though, I feel for Andrew Luck. I respect what he did in Indianapolis in a tough situation, coming in trying to fill the shoes of Peyton Manning. And also, I do want to briefly, I guess, defend the fans a little bit. And I talked to you offline about this too, but the fans booing was disappointing to hear at first. But putting some more thought into it, as a fan, it's sometimes so superficial that we're here to cheer, we're here to boo, we're here to be the immediate response and lead our team and whatever. So if you're looking at it, you just feel like you were torn away the heart and soul of your team because he doesn't want to be there. So immediately you're booing the situation. I don't think they're necessarily booing Andrew Luck as a person, but they're just saying this got taken out away from us. We were supposed to be on our way to glory, so to speak. Then if you look at it from other perspectives, like I said, like a fantasy team, unfortunately this didn't happen to me, but I was a couple hours away from it maybe, drafting an Andrew Luck, and then the next day he retires.
It happened to O.J. Simpson, actually.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he tweeted about it. He just drafted Andrew Luck, I think maybe an hour or so before.
Well, he deserves he deserves some bad karma, so that's good to happen to him. But it also happened to a lot of other people. So the point being is that I understand the fans' reaction. I hope there probably were some ignorant folks that were booing him as a person, but when it boils down to it, they care about the guy. They know he was a good guy, hopefully, that cared for the team and the city of Indianapolis and did a lot of good things there. I think he gets things straightened out, and I think he eventually suits up for a different team. But what are your thoughts on that, the booing?
You gave me a perspective I never thought about for the booing. When I heard the booing, I did not give any of the benefits of the doubt that you gave, but I do understand the knee-jerk response. But in my opinion, that knee-jerk response was equivalent to Doug Gottlieb calling Andrew Luck the most millennial thing ever, his retirement rather. And, I think that knee-jerk reaction, you're going to boo, but if there was a way to get back in touch with those fans, hopefully most of them are going to be like, you know what, I was just upset about the situation as you described. So
Yeah.
I guess as time goes on, it heals all wounds. So
I think if they would have seen his interview, and it wasn't what he said,
right,
it was just the tone of his voice and how it was really, you could tell it was weighing on him. Like this was difficult and he was distraught.
correct.
If anyone boos him from now on and they have seen that video, then I have a huge problem with that.
Yeah, they're a
But
bad person.
not seeing that and not knowing kind of what he was dealing with in detail, because how vague, again, training staff, how vague have they been about this leg injury? At first it was an ankle, then it was maybe a foot, then it's a calf. Now, oh, well, if you keep playing, you're going to tear your Achilles. Like, do they know what it is? They don't. And this has come from Jim Irsay. So again, this is like the whole organization has handled this so poorly. So that, again, leads to my weird conspiracy theory that maybe it's a bigger picture. I don't know. But either way, I think very, very interesting discussion and really groundbreaking. I mean, we don't see a player in his prime other than Michael Jordan really leave the game at that early of an age at a surprise like that. So definitely groundbreaking. But pulling back and taking a look, I mean, there's going to be a next game. There's going to be the next man up. So Jacoby Brissett jumps in at quarterback, a guy with experience, played for them in 2017, actually put up some pretty good numbers. So how does this reshape the AFC South, Sterling?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the Colts were projected to be at the top of the AFC South. And let's not forget that there was a little bit of more news. Lamar Miller with the Texans unfortunately tore his ACL. So I don't know how the Texans maybe just got extremely lucky, but they traded for Duke Johnson about a week or so before this all happened. So Duke Johnson had been integrated into the offense, and now his role will expand. To be honest, this actually seems like a great opportunity to go ahead and try to reach out to a Melvin Gordon, because it doesn't seem like the Chargers are too interested. But I don't know. From our side as fans and third party, it just seems like too easy of a match. So I don't know why it's not happening, but it just doesn't. I've heard no whispers about it, just stating what I think is obvious.
Yeah, there's been some rumors about it. Maybe a Gordon for Jadeveon Clowney swapping two disgruntled players. I just think if I'm the Texans, you're losing that every time trading for a running back. I mean, a guy like Clowney, if you keep him motivated, which is the key with him, of course, but I mean, he's going to be a top player in the league at that position. Gordon, he hasn't really proved it. So, and the running backs are dime a dozen.
No, I agree. I wouldn't want to part with the Clowney, but I would say that the Texans have had their struggles with Clowney, trying to getting him to be what they expect him to be coming out of college. So I could see them getting rid of a third or fourth round pick and then maybe moving a veteran or some kind of just a heavy contract on the roster to make the Melvin Gordon contract fit that he wants. So
yeah, because they're definitely going to have to supplement the running back position, which as a newly minted Duke Johnson owner in my fantasy league,
very smart.
This is going to heavily impact me. So do you think they're going to roll with it, just being a Duke Johnson led backfield, or do you think they're going to pull somebody else out?
It appears it's going to be up to Duke Johnson to make that decision. So it looks like he's going to be their number one week one starter rather, and we'll see how he fares in his matchup. And
now, is he able to carry the load though? Like, can he run the ball a few times?
I don't see any reason why he can't. I think sometimes when you're really good at one thing, teams don't really value what you also are able to do. So they see what a skilled receiver he is out of the backfield. So they view him as a third down back. He's not a small running back by any stretch of the imagination. He came from Miami. He did a large workload while he was there. And I think he's going to be a good fit on the Texans moving forward, because I think this is not an opportunity to move on, but I think that's what it's going to be. It's going to be an opportunity to move on from Lamar Miller, who has been consistent, but unfortunately just a little too average. So this is Duke Johnson's time to shine. And if he doesn't do anything noteworthy the first 2 weeks, I think they look at promoting from within, moving some people over, or acquiring hopefully an interesting move like a Melvin Gordon. But I would move the Colts down to the bottom of the AFC South now.
Really?
It's not that I don't like Jacoby Brissett, but we're almost a week away from the games here. We're about 2 weeks away from the games, and this is just it's a wrench that they didn't expect to be thrown into the works. So they're working against a lot of stuff, and so morale's going to be low. That first interception that Brissett throws, unless he doesn't throw one this year, I imagine it's going to be in the first 2 games. They have to go on the road to the Chargers, so an already tough matchup becomes even tougher. And it's kind of like a domino effect. If that first domino is a loss, all those dominoes start falling into the loss column, and you don't think you can do it anymore. And that division's tough.
Very true. I think the Jaguars clearly move up to the top of the division. They're the cream of the crop. You've mentioned in some of your previews that their defense is going to be back up to being one of the premier defenses in the league after kind of a letdown a little bit last year. But looking at the rest of this division, man, I mean, with those injuries and, well, the injury to Lamar Miller and then the Andrew Luck news, I mean, no one's stock rose more than Jacksonville's this past weekend. The Titans are still a long way away too towards the bottom.
Yeah, and even though the Titans, we agree, are going to be at the bottom, if you just take them out and put them in any other random division, they're probably going to be right around the middle or just a hair above it, and that just describes the Titans all-around roster. So the worst team in the division, for them to be as competitive as the Titans are with a good coach in Vrabel, they got a little bit of quarterback controversy. They're going to be a tough out. When you go to face Tennessee, you better have planned, you better have listened, you better be ready to fight in the trenches because they have an above-average defensive and offensive line. They're going to run it up and down the field if they can, unless they fall behind early. And that's really the only way to kind of beat them is if you're able to jump out ahead and get up 2 touchdowns, then you're going to force Marcus Mariota to beat you, and he's been a little bit behind, which is why they brought in a wide receiver turned quarterback Ryan Tannehill.
Yeah, I can really see this division coming down to all 3. I don't think there's going to be – I mean, maybe the Jags. I could see the Texans too, though. I don't know. I think this division is going to be a 3-horse race. I think I like the Colts. Sounds like a little bit more than you do, just based on I think Brissett, based on the numbers that he put up with a god-awful team in 2017, plus the additions that team has made. They are from top to bottom. I mean, it's a fully talented roster now. They've got some depth there. They have a defense now. They have a great offensive line led by Quentin Nelson and others. Good receiving core. So I don't know. There's been some folks that have been really, really high on Jacoby Brissett, but he's really the great unknown right now. I will tell you this. He's a tremendous follow on Twitter. If for you Twitter fans out there, Jacoby Brissett, not just football knowledge, but general life insights. He's very interesting. But it's a side note. But yeah, no, I think the Colts, man, I think they'll be around 500 in the hunt. The Texans, I could see them or the Jags maybe pulling out like at 11-5, 12-4. But yeah, I think it's going to be a really competitive division. I think pulling Luck out of it definitely changes the predictions and the outlooks, I think. But talented division is going to be very competitive for sure.
Yeah, I agree. I think my final prediction would be Texans 1, Jags 2, Titans 3, Colts 4.
Going with the Colts 4. How many games are they going to win?
I still think they're going to get around 6, but it just puts them in a tough spot because, they're going to have to be drafting a quarterback, and then they're still not going to be in the top 3 or 4 positions. So I think they're going to find themselves with 6 wins and trying to figure out what do they do. Are they going to get a free agent and try to get someone like a Jimmy Garoppolo? Not that it's going to be him, but, a quarterback who's made a name for himself.
Yeah. I tend to – I'm worried about the Texans' offensive line, for one. I just think they're not going to be very good. I could actually see the Texans going anywhere from number 2 to number 4. And then the Colts, same thing, 2 to number 4.
Texans
it's going to be interesting.
Well-coached team.
Right, yeah. And like I said, that O-line really worries me, especially – and this is another interesting way point of view and storyline in the AFC South in particular. But Deshaun Watson, what has he been known for so far in his career? He's been injured quite a bit, right? He had the lung issue last year where he couldn't even fly the team flight back. He had to drive to wherever it was because they were worried about the pressure, cabin pressure. So if they don't get their situation straightened out up front, Watson might become the Andrew Luck 2.0, get beat up early in his career and not be able to make it to 30. I mean, I don't want to see that, but it's a very similar situation in terms of super talented player, a couple key players around him, but they can't solidify that line. And their star player gets beat up too early.
Yeah, 100%. That's right.
So let's switch gears here. Let's go to the world of fantasy sports. So basically, what our approach is going to be with the fantasy breakdown with Mr. Sterling Brown, who's a very accomplished. Was it 2017? You were DraftKings number 3 in one of your leagues, Sterling?
Yes, that was the year.
Okay, so this guy knows what he's talking about. He's going to help you maximize your success with any budget. So let's go into it, Sterling. Give us your general approach to your daily leagues, and how are you successful in the world of fantasy sports?
Absolutely. So I'm very passionate about this. I enjoy a lot of the daily fantasy aspects of trying to attack a contest and how we're going to be profitable. So the contest that they have, it's important to know how many entries are you allowed to enter, because the more entries that people are allowed to enter, the greater their chances are winning, of course. So if you're a person who only is going to do 1, maybe 3 lineups or somewhere in that neighborhood, let's try to focus on the single entry contest, the 3 entry contest, so that way you're maximizing your opportunities. So there are going to be beginner contests for most parts. You're going to compete against some people that are just like you if you are a beginner. And then if you're going to go ahead and do the $1 million contests, which are very attractive, just be aware that people are entering 150 lineups. They use very advanced algorithms. I like to think I use an algorithm, but it's really just a pretty simple formula, in my opinion. My formula allows me to diversify. So I actually play across the 3 major platforms, in my opinion, which are DraftKings, FanDuel, and Yahoo. So what I do is I identify the players that I like at each position: quarterback, running back, wide receiver, tight end. You have a flex position, which can be any of the offensive positions except quarterback, and then also a defense.
So basically what you're saying, if I could hop in real quick.
Of course.
So you're saying in the big $1 million prize, that's all over the Sunday games, you're saying that I could submit 150 different lineups to better my chances?
Exactly. So in DraftKings, that's $20 a contest. That's $3,000 in entries that a lot of people are doing. And they call them sharks. So they call them sharks for a reason. And sharks to eat. And if you're not a shark, then you're oftentimes the food. So just be aware of that is the main thing.
So how would you suggest, like, your approach? You're new to this and you want to maybe just give it a shot in the big money. You say just put out 5 solid lineups. Like, how do you kind of get your toes dipped into it, if you will?
Absolutely. So when I was doing it, I was doing the 20 entry maxes, and I was taking those 20 entries that I made, and I would go ahead and put them in the Millionaire Maker. But you have your good weeks and your down weeks, and just depending on your threshold, your tolerance, I just decided, you know what, I like just having 1 lottery ticket. That's fine. So for this year, I'll be doing my 20 entry maxes, take my favorite lineup, and I'll just put a lottery ticket in the $20 and the $9, and we'll see what happens with those. But
yeah, it sounds like your approach to this end of it is mine with fantasy. Like, I had to limit myself to 1 fantasy league this year.
Oh, correct.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
because
before daily fantasy, people were doing 15, 20, 25 and upwards in leagues. And what that leads to is you're just neglecting maybe 23 of those 25 teams. So you really only like looking at 2 or a handful. That's really all we can handle. It's a lot of work. So
right. And it made it so much harder just as a general, like, just a basic fan watching the game. It's like, I have my lineup in this one league, and then in the other league, I have this guy that's playing against my team. You know what I mean? So it just got so convoluted and, really hard to just be a fan. And it seemed like for a minute there, every touchdown that was scored, I had 4 teams. I was like, oh, well, he's in one of my leagues. I don't know. Oh, no, actually, he's playing against me in another league. So it's like, I don't even know who to cheer for anymore.
Yeah, for season long, it can get a little confusing. But the good thing is on daily fantasy, like I said, the first thing I do is I identify the players that I like. So if there's players that I like when I'm watching the game, it's a lot easier to remember, oh, I didn't like this matchup, or I did like this matchup. So it's a little less confusing. I know it's a little counterintuitive because each week's a little different.
Right.
But, you build your lineups ahead of time, stay on top of the news. And if you only have a handful of lineups to manage, you're not going to get overwhelmed.
So basically creating your spreadsheets, you're finding players that, like you said, you've done your research. So you find the guys that you like, and that's basically how you place your bets throughout the year.
Correct, yes. And so I look at the price of so each of the websites, of course, comes up with the fictional price of these players based on their skill level, their matchup, their playing time, and everything, their opportunity, for lack of a better word. And I just look at their price comparisons against each other, figure out where they're the best value. And so if I like Dak Prescott a given week, I'll look at where he's the best value, and I'll tend to focus on playing him on that one particular site of the three I named. And then I can play some of the other players that I like a Matt Ryan or Phillip Rivers or Deshaun Watson. Just using these as examples, not particularly high on anyone in that, but just using examples there.
Okay. So basically, one of the other things you pointed out that you like to focus on is you like to kind of look at tournaments with a larger prize pool, but they also limit the entries to not exceed over 20. So in those cases, give us an example of, I guess, one of the contests for a large prize pool. Like what might be the –
Yeah. So there's one contest on DraftKings. It's 5 entries, $33 per entry. So you're talking about $165. And the first prize person gets $50,000. So you're competing against a relatively small group of people compared to the Millionaire Maker, which is over hundreds of thousands of entries, and you've consolidated down to 10,000 people. So you know that you're only competing against 5 other lineups from any one given person, and the more you're willing to take risks, and if you're right in those risks, then you have a greater likelihood of being rewarded. So if you're willing to compromise and win $50,000 instead of $1 million, you can increase your chances tenfold.
Wow. Yeah, it sounds like a little bit more of an even playing field where you avoid those sharks from being out there as you described them. And then the Millionaire Maker, as you said, so every now and then you'll just kind of throw your hat in the ring, so to speak. Take a shot at it.
I'll do one on the 2 sites that do the million to first place. And what they do is, as the season goes on, if interest goes down, then they start reducing the prize pool a little bit. But they always start off with $1 million to first. So the best thing you can do is try to win early. So it's always nice to at least have one entry in those to start, and then you can always fade off on that if you like.
Gotcha. A lot of good insight there. We appreciate it, Sterling. Now, there is something exciting here on Armchair Sports Talk NFL that we are going to be doing. Sterling's been hosting a league for quite a few years, and he has recently got a new team owner this year in our college football contributor, Mr. Sean Hicks. So the draft is set for this Sunday, 8 o'clock, and we're going to put together a little live streaming show on our YouTube channel. We're still trying to figure out the ins and the outs, exactly how it's going to look, but we want to give you guys live insight with our college and pro experts, definitely with Sterling being our fantasy football and pro football expert here at Armchair, to go through it live, round by round, and kind of give feedback and analysis for different picks. We think it'd be a really unique opportunity for our followers and viewers and listeners to be able to interact with us on. So look out for that. We're going to be doing that this Sunday at 8 o'clock Eastern, 7 Central. Any other thoughts, Sterling, fantasy, NFL, anything before we call it a night?
No, looking forward to the live stream of the fantasy draft, and just be prepared for some off-the-wall comments. We're going to share our screen. We'll be honest in our feedback as we pick each other's players by accident or on purpose, and talk trash a little bit, just have a little bit of fun, because that's what fantasy football is all about first and foremost. So looking forward to that.
Now, is the draft order already set?
No, it's going to be randomized an hour before. So not many people like that, but at least it's even, so we all dislike it together.
Yeah, I ended up with the first pick of my draft, so I wasn't all that upset about it. But we'll have to wait and see till Sunday. But please make sure you join us there. Please make sure you subscribe to our channel on YouTube to see all of our content right now on college football and NFL. Follow us on Facebook at Armchair Sports Talk, and on Twitter at ACS Sport Talk, the Twitter handle. Please contribute, guys. Give us feedback. Let us know what you think. We appreciate y'all's follows. And for Sterling Brown, I'm Brandon Harris. We'll see you next time here on Armchair Sports Talk.